Welcome back to We Play Games. I'm Walker, and here we are about to discuss how to subsidize, or rather, how not to subsidize your rail. So one of the things that I see people asking a lot about is, how do I make my railway profitable? You can't really make it profitable, but you can make it way less unprofitable by paying attention to the way rail works and how much you need and why you might overbuild it. So what is rail? Rail is going to be this building here that consumes coal and engines. It employs capitalists, machinists, clerks, and laborers on the base methods of production, and it produces transportation. And if you keep all of those things in mind, then you should know how to do profitability here pretty easily. But I'm going to explain it just for everybody in case there's some confusion. So here we have a building that has input goods of engines and coal. So one of the things that you can do to help reduce the overall cost of transportation in your country is to have relatively inexpensive engines and relatively inexpensive coal. As Belgium here, we've already met those requirements. The input costs are not going to be crushing for us. We have engines, we have coal at basically flat rates, but we also have really inexpensive transportation, which is the output good that railway produces and therefore can sell and therefore can make money off of it. And so what you need to do in order to maximize the value here for your railway and therefore reduce the total money that you have to subsidize as the government, because you really don't want to be building rail that you're not getting infrastructure out of. That's just the worst use of construction points that you can come up with. Infrastructure does do stuff if you overbuild it. It helps you with being targeted by mass migration. So there's some value to being able to build up a larger rail. The way, of course, you build up a larger rail is by having your transportation be supported. So it doesn't matter whether or not moving coal mines over to rail transportation is bad for the 5,000 laborers. That sounds like it's your pop's problem, because what this is doing for you is it's shifting the cost of the rail off of you and your government subsidies and on to the coal mines and the iron mines, right? So by doing this, we're going to explode the cost of transportation. Oh no, what are we going to do? Well, we can also increase the production of transportation by going into wooden rail. And now look at that. By switching around the methods of production here in our country, by consuming transportation on things, and then depending on how much transportation demands there are in your country, lining up the carriage type that you want, you can actually have very profitable rail, which means that now, instead of being forced to subsidize these guys to a pretty penny tune, we're sending them 25 pounds in subsidies. That's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. And it's because we just shifted the cost of running the rail onto everybody else. Now, that said, that is sort of why I think that ports are a lot stronger than railway, is that rail is just a lot more expensive to maintain. Ports, literally the only thing you need in order to make good value out of a port is a way to trade, to use your convoys. And you always can come up with a way to trade, right? Here we have really expensive paper, and that's something that we have pop needs for, so we're going to do an import route. And we're going to do it from the British market, and that's going to be really helpful to us because paper is consumed by people working on government buildings, and so that's going to reduce the cost for government goods, which we need lots of paper and lots of clippers for. Use your infrastructure to kind of help bolster your economy. Use ports. Ports are great. They build up your infrastructure. They don't generate extra transportation that competes against itself. But B, if you have rail and you need to reduce its burden on your economy, just shift the cost off to your capitalists. Make them buy as much rail as possible. If your transportation is still really inexpensive and there's no way back, then go ahead and switch down to cargo prioritization. That's not a shameful thing to do. Similarly, switching up to electric trains, that can be pretty good because it gives you more infrastructure than it gives you transportation as a nice little bonus. So of course you do need to keep in mind that by having an input good that is electricity instead of coal, you do need to alter your cost calculation here. Same with diesel trains. But generally speaking, I think if you're trying to make sure that you're minimizing your subsidies on your rail, that you're running a pretty efficient thing here. I generally like to go into electric. Diesel is tough just because there's not a lot of oil. And then stay on cargo prioritization unless you have an actual economic need for transportation. And if you want to shift the power here on the rail around, you can be in government run instead of privately owned. But all that's going to do for you as Belgium, for instance, is take money that would be contributing to the investment pool and give it to people who are not going to contribute to the investment pool. So I would encourage you to not do that. Just stay on privately owned until you're ready to go into worker cooperative, unless you have like a desperate need for industrialist political power, in which case you go into publicly traded. This won't actually get you any more investment pool. It'll actually give you very, very, very slightly less, but it will give you an awful lot more capitalists running around, which is going to be net positive for you if you're trying to juice the strength of the industrialists. All right, that's Walker, and that's how to not subsidize your rail.